Hello and welcome to the full backtracking episode for The Strokes. We start with the band's debut album, Is This It? Released in 2001. It came out through RCA and Rough Trade, and it was produced by Gordon Raphael. So, I do have to actually mention the Modern Age EP, which I covered in the Very Brief History video, because a lot of these songs from that EP would make it to this one. However, there was an issue because there was a song on that and a song on this actual album, which I don't recall the name of right now, that had to be removed due to the 9/11 attacks happening around the same time. So, yeah, that's unfortunate because from what I could tell, it wasn't an overtly political song, and you have to sort of search for it separately, but it is available to listen to. It's just not on the official release of the album, which I do find interesting. But what I do also find interesting as well is the fact that a lot of the songs were done in live takes, like in one take. The band did not really waste a lot of time. Then again, this album came out like 6, 7, 8 months, how many ever months I said it was since the EP, so yeah, they didn't really waste a lot of time in getting this one made. And you would think that that would make it feel rushed, but no, it's a really well thought out album. It's got really solid melodies to the instrumental work. I love the post-punk vibe that they go for. The lyrics do cover topics like romance and love, and not as much political stuff as you would think, but it is slightly there, not too much. I think the song that was removed was about police brutality or something to do with the police in New York. I think it was just called Police in New York or something, and yeah, imagine that song trying to come out like almost 21 years later. Good God. Anyway, really, really good album all in all. The performances are quite charming as well. You can tell that the band just had a lot of fun playing off of each other as well. And the production is really great as well. Gordon Raphael really brings out the best in the album's sound, and the structuring is quite solid too. I just love the pacing and the vibe. My favourite song goes to Alone Together. So yeah, it's a very fun album from start to finish, and I do say why the debut is so critically lauded, because it has gotten a lot of praise over time, so yeah, I can see why now. Next is the band's second album, Room on Fire, released in 2003. It came out through RCA, only RCA this time, and it was produced by George Raphael again. So after their debut, they were obviously pretty successful. They were on a huge world tour, and they made a lot of TV appearances on a lot of talk shows. And yeah, basically their popularity really fucking skyrocketed after the release of Is This It? Besides that, I don't really have a lot of notes on the album besides the ones I just brought up, so yeah, we're just going to move on. Again, just really solid stuff about what you would expect by this point, I guess, even though it's only the second album. Just a really nice follow-on from their debut, just adds a lot of, just adds enough to really carry on the sound, but yeah, it's a bit shorter from what I understand. Still fills in a lot. The band is still really great. I still like a lot of the lyrical content as well, even if there is a little bit more sexy stuff in it. A little bit more sexy stuff, so yeah, I can appreciate some good sexy stuff. My favourite song goes to Between Love and Hate, and honestly, second album, sophomore effort, just really solid following from their debut. Next is the band's third album, First Impressions of Earth, released in 2006. It came out through the same label, and it was produced by Gordon again, with David Kahn, Kane, however you pronounce it, also joining to produce. So yeah, this album was the first to sort of show a weakness in the Strokes' in the band's sort of personal dealings with each other. So David and Gordon did not really get along as producers, and the band initially wanted to produce it with Gordon, but they brought in David, who had worked with the likes of Sublime and Paul McCartney, to help. But they really didn't get along, and eventually David just took over production of the album completely. There was also a lot more media coverage following the band. After the success of the first two albums, I'm really not surprised they did grow a bit more popular, especially Julian Casablancas, and they were going to put out a live album called Live in London, but it was abandoned completely. I think the main reason was because they were focusing on this one, or because of the production issues that they were having with Dave and Gordon, but yeah, it wasn't really good luck. Having said that, despite the infighting that was happening, the album is still pretty solid. It still works out like a Strokes album, still has that really good post-punk vibe, got a really fun, dark edge to it, you know. It's still got that really good balance that I've always liked about them. Again, still a bit on the sexy side, but it really works for them, and it's, yeah, just straightforward, really good post-punk, really good third album from them. My favourite song goes to 15 Minutes, and yeah, despite the infighting that happened, still really like how this one turned out. Next is the band's fourth album, Angles, released in 2011. It came through RCA again, and it was produced by the band themselves alongside the help of Joe Ciccarella and Gus Oberg. Well, maybe the help of those two is not the right term to use, because there was, again, a lot of production issues for this one, more so than there were on First Impressions of Earth. Primarily the fact that Julian Casablancas wasn't showing up to work, and the band heavily disagreed on a lot of songs. In fact, only one song retained its original form on the track listing, that song being titled Life is Simple in the Moonlight. Every other song of the 10, of the remaining 9 rather, was a completely different song before this, and Oh man, that can't have been good. Another thing that is unique as well is obviously this album came out 5 years after First Impressions of Earth, and the band did go on a pretty big tour after that album came out, but they also went on hiatus because, to be honest, they couldn't really stand each other's guts, and that can happen quite a bit when you get too famous too quick. But despite that, again, the album is still pretty good. It's one of their weirder albums, I think, because of the production issues that they went through, but in terms of how it was produced, like mixed and mastered and engineered, it still sounds really good. The guitar is still quite nice on it, and it's still got the typical Strokes melodies, but you can tell that they're sort of not necessarily phoning it in, but they do sort of... It feels like they want to get through it a bit quicker because of how much fighting there was going on. And remember, this was after the hiatus, so that really didn't help. My favourite song goes to the incredibly named Gratisfaction. I actually really like how that's put together, and yeah, again, a lot of issues did plague this album, and it's not one of my favourite Strokes albums, but for them, it's still pretty solid, you know? Next is the band's fifth album, Come Down Machine, released in 2013 and has the same label, and it was produced by Gus Oberg, just Gus this time. So I do actually want to talk about how they recorded Angles really briefly, because it's also how they recorded Come Down Machine, because the band would actually bring in different ideas individually, as opposed to the first three albums where they were sort of more heavily trying to work together. But they tried at the same time this way around, and even though they were fighting a lot on Angles, it actually worked a little bit better for them here. There was also a really funny self-promotional thing I wanted to bring up, because they were teasing the title of the album for quite a while, and a user on Reddit actually found the album's title just through, like, sheer madness, I guess you could say, because Reddit is the maddest place on the internet. Well, it's among the maddest places on the internet besides Twitter. But anyway, yeah, the album feels a little bit more cohesive than the last one did. It is still a bit of a weirder one for them, but it's still, again, their typical post-punk shenaniganery. It's still got a lot of really good melodies going for it. The band do sound a little bit better and a little bit easier working together as well. And yeah, again, there's just a lot of really good stuff going for it. Lyrically, it is, again, bit weird, but still makes a lot more cohesive sense than Angles did. My favourite song goes to Slow Animals, and yeah, this is a pretty good way to sort of recover after what happened on Angles. Again, that album wasn't a complete mess, but they needed, like, I think this is when they need to take the hiatus, but it still worked for them. And finally is the band's sixth and most recent album, The New Abnormal. Released in 2020, it came out through Colton RCA, and it was produced by Rick Rubin this time around. And yes, we have a new record label. So the band did want to try and tour a little bit after the release of Come Down Machine. They mostly want to try and get that tour done in 2019. However, there were a lot of issues, even like some shows just being straight out cancelled. So the band decided to try and take that time to focus on writing, considering it was like 7 years after their last album. That was probably a smart idea. However, they did actually drop an EP in 2016 titled Future, Present, Past, and they dropped that EP through their new deal signing with Cult. So there you go, that's how the song's called. They put out the EP, and they put out this album as well. So that's all that brought up. Speaking of this album, it does feel a lot like a return to form from their first two, and also it was my first Strokes album, and I do remember actually really enjoying it. I still really enjoy it now, you know. It is a bit longer than their usual shtick, but it's still pretty solid. A lot of really good writing to it, and the band do feel a bit more mature, and again, like, they get on a lot better than they did for the past couple of albums at least. And honestly, just some really good performances, just some really good structuring as well, and again, a sense of maturity. It's a bit less weird and a bit more cohesive and straightforward and easier to understand, which as a plebe, I do appreciate. And my favourite song goes to Bad Decision. So yeah, this is just a really great way to encapsulate their career so far, and don't have any more albums from them to talk about, because that would mean a two-part episode. I am looking forward to whatever they drop next, though. However, we've got an outro to go to, so let's go to the outro. And that's it. That is the last one-part episode of Backtracking for this season. It's not! Haha, I held this one so fucking close to the chest. For a long time, a friend of mine named Scar has been wanting me to cover an artist called Little Peep, and I didn't do it initially because he only had 2 albums out before he passed away. However, recently I discovered that he has a 3rd album out, and that does make him viable. And as a favour to my friend, I am going to be covering him for the next episode. But after that will be Dinosaur Jr., the three-part finale. But the next episode will be a 3-album episode, which will be a bit of a softer palate cleanser for me, for Little Peep, for my friend Scar. So I'll see you all probably in a couple of weeks for that. But as for what's next from me, tonight, PBW versus ABW, and tomorrow night rather, the entire Day of the Tentacle Let's Play, all put up on public, because it's already edited and put up. It was a surprisingly easy one to edit for me. And the next thing after that on Thursday might be an episode of Music of the Week, and Friday night, I don't know why I'm doing this. Friday night hand will be my stream of my 10th Let's Play, the beginning of the stream of the 10th Let's Play, Sunset Overdrive. I'm looking forward to that, but I'll see you all. I got a lot of shit to do, but I'll see you all for it. As always, thank you for watching. You're awesome. Bye bye.